the microphone, is it working? Yeah, okay, now, perfectly. So, hello everyone, hope you're doing all well. And actually today is our last REAS event here in Madrid. And for this last event, we got a very special guest for us, Mr. Giorgio Tinacci, who is the founder and CEO of Casavo. And today we will deep dive into the topic of disruption of residential real estate markets. Mr. Tinacci, the stage is yours.
Yes, good. So nice to meet you all. Very happy to meet in person. I think we had a similar event, but virtually, unfortunately, due to COVID some time ago. I'm pretty often in Madrid. I'm based in Milan, where we have our headquarters, but we have quite some large operation now in Spain, luckily. So I'm here pretty often. So I thought I could take the chance, and thanks again for inviting me. So let's keep it informal. I have a pretty basic presentation, but really happy to go through you questions and things that really you would like to discover, and very happy to share learnings of let's say this entrepreneurial path we have followed as Casavo. So first of all, okay, this works. A bit about myself. So I'm Giorgio, I'm the founder and CEO of Casavo. I'm 30 years old. To give you a bit of background, my story, I grew up, I'm Italian, I grew up in a very small village in Tuscany, close to Florence, on the Chianti Hills, you might know for touristic reasons. And I've been lucky enough because I, let's say, came from that pretty traditional small family of entrepreneurs, my family, and so I inherited that entrepreneurial DNA and passion for real estate from my father, what we call the bricks fever, let me say, in Italy. After that, I moved to Milan to study business at Bocconi University, more or less, when was that? 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I have a business background, so I started the generalist business course at Bocconi University. And then when I started university, because I was supporting my family business, I had that passion to build something on my own. So during university, I was really into startups, technology, and all, let's say, that buzzword. It was very new at the time. I remember it was 2012, and in Italy was the first time that legally startups were recognized as innovative firms. And so during my studies, I also had the opportunity to travel abroad. I went to Boston, to Hong Kong, where I did my double degree. And I was lucky again enough there because I worked in a technology firm, in a food delivery venture. It was called Food Panda. I still there in Hong Kong, where I was supporting the launch back in 2014. So that was the first time I really got into that high energy dynamics of a startup, what it means. It was the first rocket internet world, so I was part of that, let's say, wave. And for me it was super exciting, right? Because I felt, okay, this is the kind of environment and things I would like to build, and so I was very lucky with that experience. And after that, I finished my studies, I think it was 2015. I didn't have really clear ideas about what to do, as it usually happens when you finish a business course. And so I joined a consulting firm. I think 80% of my classmates did the same. I joined the Boston Consulting Group in Milan. And randomly again, and random was, I think luck and random was a big component of my personal and professional life. I was part of the technology practice. So very different kind of technology from what I'm building today. It was more around digital transformation in banking, in industrial goods sector, and in insurance. But again, let's say that allowed me to form or to have a mindset toolkit, let me say, to face problem solving as an entrepreneur later on. And then I worked at BCG for really not a long time. It was less than 2 years. I made some hard choices, which were not super socially accepted also from my family, I have to say. I got accepted at an MBA, which was paid at the time by consulting firms. I was proposed to move to Dubai, and I said no, because I wanted to do something on my own. So it was a bit of a, let's say, gut decision, but I'm really happy, and independently of whether we had some success or not, I mean, it's something that I would do, definitely I would do again. So I think it was summer 2017, I was very curious because I was looking around, okay, what can I do? Are there like some large opportunity that makes sense in Europe and starting from Southern Europe in Italy or in Spain? And one of the things was this passion I had for real estate and technology. So I was really fascinated by like how technology could evolve very traditional sectors, right? So I mean, we have seen this with travel, where digitalization happened first, let's say, penetrating low-ticket, high-frequency transactions. So 20 years ago, probably you would go to a travel agency to book your flight physically, but today you do everything online. Then it happened to automotive, and so I said, okay, there is probably the largest consumer asset class, which is residential real estate, that hasn't been digitized yet, and it's probably at a tipping point for disruption. So I started looking at what was happening globally in other regions. There was really almost nothing. PropTech was a term which was non-existing essentially back in 2017. And I said, okay, look, I mean, in Europe you have a 1 trillion plus home sales market every year. It's as large as the US. It's even more inefficient, even more fragmented, even more offline, with a very poor customer experience. And I realized that the only innovation that happened in the space was, thanks to the job of property portals, 80% of buyers started browsing for a home online, right? So you go to Idealista now in 80% of the cases to look for a home. But that was the only meaningful innovation because the rest of the transactions was actually offline and there was no service for the seller. And so for a lot of reasons, looking at what was happening in the US with other models, etc., I jumped and I said, okay, I need to do something in this space. I spent quite some time doing analysis, weekends, nights, working on this project on my own. And I was penniless, so I didn't buy a home. I barely rented one. I never sold a home. So I was lucky again enough because through a friend of mine, I got in touch with an investor from Germany, which was starting to have a strong thesis on the space. So they were already like quoting PropTech, which was something new for me. So I started discussing with this investment firm, thanks to this friend, and I said, look, I would like to do something. This is my idea. I think we should start with providing a disruptive service for sellers for a lot of reasons, which I'll discuss later. And I said, look, okay, we want to do something in Europe as well. We did some investment in the US. We can support you. So I was lucky enough because I could, let's say, get a very small pre-seed amount, which today would be small. It was like 250K in equity. But that was enough for me to start. In a very naive way, I have to say. I didn't know anything about a lot of things, but I was really excited to do so. So I started the company at, I think it was September 2017. Our first year was actually 2018, and over the years we have scaled massively. Today we are in 3 countries, Italy, Spain, Portugal, 8 cities, launching new markets as well. More than 340 people in our company, so I'll get you through the KPIs, but in a nutshell, it was quite an exciting and intense journey over the last 4 years. And the thing that makes us proud a lot is that we managed, in this very short time frame, probably to become the next generation PropTech platform in our markets. So that's a bit the, let's say, my story in a nutshell. And about Casavo, what I realized is that, so I was looking at the market and I said, okay, in Europe versus other markets, it's very much a seller market. So all transactions are originated by sellers. So if you want to sell a home, either you try to do it on your own, but in most of the cases to the support of a broker, you give a mandate, and then who owns the supply in the market drive demand, essentially. And this is very different from what I've seen, for example, in the US, where you have a buyer agent, etc., and it's more like buyer-oriented, the origination of the transaction. So I said, okay, if we want to build this next-generation marketplace where people will be able to sell and buy homes with a few taps on their mobile phones and address all the housing-related needs in one single place, we have to start from the root cause, which is the problem of selling a home. So we realized that in Europe, all transactions are originated by sellers, but selling a home is a nightmare, essentially. So it's a process which takes, in our active markets, more than 200 days to get to the notary. You might get to the arras in Spain first, but then you have the whole bureaucracy, usually 60 days before like getting the mortgage approved and all of that. So it's very long. It's very time consuming. People usually like sell a home once or twice in a lifetime. So it's something new for you, and you don't have a lot of support. You might have the broker, but then you have technical activities. You are really left on your own, and so it's a very time-consuming activity that creates a lot of stress in the person. And the third problem is that you need to host a lot of buyers' visits. So on average, it takes 20 buyer visits, clearly depend on the market, on the property, and all of that, but you get a lot of people that get to your place, and you don't know, okay, who's qualified, who's not, who's like just shopping around for visiting homes. Finally, it's a very costly experience, right? So if you just take into account brokerage fees, in Spain, for example, we are talking about 5% in most of the cases, and on top of that, you have a lot of hidden cost. The double mortgage, because you cannot like buy before you sell. Usually you have some technical activities to perform before selling the home, and a lot of other costs, which could add up to 9% in transaction cost, essentially. So starting from this problem, we said, okay, here, in order to be differentiating in such a crowded market and provide a completely disruptive user experience, we have to really revise the paradigm of this whole process. So I got pretty much fascinated about this business model, which is called instant buyer, that was born in the US, and I thought it was the perfect thing to start. So essentially we said, okay, why don't we remove one step in the value chain, which is a very basic step, which is the one of finding the buyer, because ourselves, leveraging on technology and data and access to more sophisticated capital markets, we can buy directly the home. And so we said, we started with this process, with this product, which we call sell to Casavo or iBuying, where essentially we're saying, okay, if you want to sell your home, it's very simple. You go to our website, fill in a data request form. At the end, you have an API which gives you an instant online valuation integrated with our what we call AVM, so it's an automated valuation model. You can click a button, and then we guarantee you that in maximum 7 days, we are going to buy your home. So this is a completely paradigm change, which was the status quo. That allowed us to really become the go-to place for every home seller. And I think it was the combination of this very disruptive value proposition compared to the status quo, paired with our capability to provide pricing information for free on the market in a market typically characterized by a very high information asymmetry. We were the first player launching the free online AVM for consumers, even before property portals, and that gave us a pretty significant first mover advantage, I have to say. So thanks to that, we really see a lot of properties that are going to be available for sale on the market. To give you a sense of that, in Milan last year, we probably evaluated online in on our website 70% of all the homes that got sold in our market. It's a ratio, and there is no clean data, but it's a very huge number. And we have seen this trend in all the cities moving ahead. So we start usually at the smaller scale, and then once you get brand recognition and you start to do more transaction, your pricing accuracy improves over time. This is a pattern. So thanks to that, we said, okay, now we have a huge number of sellers. We were constrained. We couldn't buy like all those homes. And we said, okay, why don't we like provide an integrated experience? We launch new services related to our sellers so that we can provide the best user experience, whatever your priority. What we realized is that there were like two kinds of sellers in the market, simplifying things. One cluster, which was the one of the people that want to maximize for certainty and speed. And so these are the ones that are super in fit with our cash offer proposition. Then there is another bucket of sellers, which are the ones which want, let me say, to maximize the sale proceeds. So they say, I'm fine, I don't need to sell in 7 days. Let's see on the market whether I can get to the upper boundary. Maybe they have higher expectation. They want to test whether the market is validating or not their expectations on price. So we launched this new service, which we call Sell with Casavo, starting from Italy in January last year. And essentially, if you want to test the market, we can help you with that as well. At a lower brokerage fee, we give you access to the best partner broker, and with the same Casavo user experience, you can try and get the highest price. And moving ahead, we are going to offer different services in order to improve the life of our customers. So let's say that the core product, so it's this instant buyer model, but we really leveraged on that as a sort of wedge to get all the high intent sellers on the platform. And now we are able to participate into transactions in different ways based on the customer priorities. And thanks to these, we started to go through let's say a virtuous cycle. So what we did was, first step was we got to those high intent sellers on the platform. We were controlling the top of the funnel of our traffic on the market. We started to build curated inventory and supply. And what we realized that happened is that a lot of home buyers started to go directly on our website as opposed to property portal. So we've seen this clearly in Italy first, where we have more volumes, but we are seeing this in Spain right now as well. So being positioned at, let's say, the center between supply from sellers and demand from buyers, the next step in the evolution we see of ourselves is that we would be able, essentially, to match fragmented supply with fragmented demand from buyers from the very beginning in a seamless way. Because what we are doing now is essentially we are building supply, so either buying homes or brokering homes on the back of knowing what is the prospect demand on the market that gets directly to us. So we know that, I don't know, there are 10 people that are looking at the moment for a 2-room flat in Salamanca. The moment in which we have people that want to sell in Salamanca, we can simply do the match, essentially. So being positioned at the center of this relationship, we are able really to cover with a full stack technology the whole value chain. So what we did was, not only we built this proprietary pricing engine that was bringing transparency on the market, and on the other hand was allowing us to take sound and really fast underwriting decisions on these properties, but we also built a full workflow management system architecture with different modules throughout the value chain. So from valuation, which happens on our website, property visit, and now can be done remotely on our proprietary app or async by simply uploading information around the property, the all document sharing, the due diligence, the notary closing, the refurbishment operations which leverage on our supply chain technology stack, the direct listing on our platform, and finally the wholesale process, reinventing and providing a differentiating user experience for our buyers as well. And so today we are not just, let's say, improving and covering the pure like sell and buy experience, but we are also able, being part of the transaction, to provide all those value-added services which are connected to a home sale. So for example, last year we recognized that the mortgage application process was a really nightmare. We had all the documents, we were part of the transaction, we know the fair market value of the home pretty well because it's our job. So we said, okay, why don't we also help our buyers with an integrated experience to get the mortgage financing? And so we started offering this service. We have seen that more than 80% of our customers for all sales subject to mortgage decided to opt for our mortgage service. And so that made us, let's say, comfortable to launch all additional ancillary services like insurance, furniture, etc., because we recognize that our asset in the end is that we are sort of a layer within the transaction, part of the transaction, and so this high degree of proximity allowed us to really have an optimal foundation to disrupt all home-related services, from financing to renovation to property management and all of that. And yeah, so in a nutshell, this is something that, especially when speaking about innovation with other students, we like to mention. When you speak about innovation, usually you have two kinds, right? So you have product innovation or process innovation. The kind of innovation we are trying to do here with this journey is really about category design. So it means changing completely the market, creating a new market, and redefining the boundaries of the space. And with us, having the ambition to become the category king in this next generation residential market within Europe. So if you think about Uber, they are the category king of on-demand transportation. If you talk about Airbnb, about shared hospitality, Google about access to information, and we want to be the same at a regional level for selling and buying homes in Europe, essentially. And so this is a really, let's say, nice slide, because when we started with this kind of ambition, we were all like super young. There was a lot of cognitive bias. So real estate is one of those sectors that you cannot disrupt immediately. And so people really didn't understand like what we were doing. We were not a broker. We were not a real estate investment fund. We were not like a developer as well. And so at the beginning, like people, when there were like the first news about us in Italy, they were saying like, you are palazzinari, which is a very bad word in Italian to say like, you are like just a brick and mortar developer in the outskirts of a city. Then people understood that there was this new paradigm. We managed to build our brand, and together with our brand, we managed to convey to the customers and to consumers that there was a new way to sell your home in the market, which was through iBuyer. And finally, now that we have a more differentiating proposition towards sellers and buyers, I would say that we are trying, let's say, to convey our proposition with a full-stop shop proposition as a technology residential platform in general terms, so that you can have, if you want to sell a home, you can sell to us, you can sell with us. If you want to buy a home, you can buy directly from us and get all the services which are connected to a home transaction. It was a long journey, so this is another, let's say, hilarious one. This was our co-working in October 2017 in Milan, where we started. So we started from covering a few neighborhoods in Milan city in the southern part. And then after that, we really had a very high penetration approach, which we think paid off pretty well, right? So we understood that real estate is very local. So we were starting always like with one neighborhood, then going to another neighborhood, then going to another neighborhood, expanding to the whole city. And then when we were seeing like that organic growth keeping up pretty rapidly, we were expanding into other cities. So we started in Milan, 2018, then we went to Rome, Florence, Turin, then we went to Spain already 2 years ago. So we have quite some experience with a lot of mistakes as well, to be honest. In Madrid, then in Barcelona, Bologna in Italy, and finally Portugal and Lisbon very recently, which we announced a month ago. So today, to tell you a bit about our numbers, we have done, this is a bit updated, but we have done 3,000 transactions, more or less, worth more than 1 billion in all these active cities, so with very high market share. So if you look at our market share, for example, in the first cities, in tier 1 large cities such as Milan and Rome, we probably got to 2 to 3% market share already at the end of last year. Smaller tier 2 cities such as Florence and Bologna already 5%. And Madrid, for example, which is probably the largest metropolitan market, in few neighborhoods, we really got to very high market share as well. And so we are following that same concentrated approach, which worked very well so far. We have raised quite some capital. I think, like some of you studying real estate, you might understand that we leverage different sources of capital. So we do both debt, which is a quite specific thing, and we have seen a lot of innovative firms leveraging on that. It's very similar, for example, to buy now, pay later, if you know the business. So they leverage on debt the same way we do. It's like the fuel that we do in order to operate with our core business. So there we have raised, it's not public yet, but we have raised more than $500 million in asset-backed debt facilities. And so these are really like, it's like you have an overdraft secured by properties on your bank account, and so you can buy and sell property on a rolling basis. It was a very long journey. On the debt side, we started with me and our initial CFO trying to put in place private debt vehicles with family offices or high net worth individual, because we were not getting debt from anybody, essentially. Then we moved to special credit situation fund, which means like fund that give you a lot of flexibility on debt, but with really high cost. And that allowed us really to grow with volumes. And then the biggest move was at the beginning of last year, when we realized that we had to build a product which was scalable across multiple countries in Europe. So we put in place a securitization platform, which is a, let's say, a financial product in debt markets based in Ireland with Goldman Sachs as a major lender. And one funny thing is that debt, it's the opposite of equity. So essentially, it's almost impossible to raise debt at the beginning when you want to have like 2-3 million in debt. When you go out in the market and you have already scale, etc., and it's asset-backed debt, as in our case, it's very easy. So when you go out to raise 100 million, 200 million, you have track record. I mean, it's very easy. We just raised another 250, and it was very easy, I have to say. And for me, it's a paradox because I'm new to the industry, but that's what happened. On the equity, on the other hand, it's we are a VC-backed technology firm, as a lot of others you might know. So we follow the classic path from pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, and not disclosed Series D. And we have raised we have disclosed. It's roughly 100 million euros with our last round, which was a year ago, of 50 million. We have raised from different pockets of capital. I'm a big believer of smart capital and long-term partners rather than short-term builders, speculators, which can get very excited but when things go well, but they need to be there also when things are problematic. So we raised really from European VC funds, business angels and family offices in real estate and in financial markets that helped us really a lot at the beginning. VCs from Germany, Italy, Spain as well, France. Then lately we raised from a late stage VC from San Francisco, which was quite a big move for us because we brought that very aggressive like Silicon Valley mindset that let's say allowed us like to do a step up. And finally we raised, the last round was led by Exor, which is the large financial holding of the Agnelli family essentially. And yeah, now we are, I think, more than 340. We have grown very fast. Consider that probably last time I was speaking here, we were, 150 or something like this, which was not easy at all. I would say that for me and as an entrepreneur, the main thing was always like investing in human capital from the very beginning, building a strong culture. Aside like from the awards of LinkedIn, Great Place to Work, what we really care about is that people are happy when they go to work. It's a very simple and silly thing, but it makes the difference. So everybody sharing the same vision from the beginning, having that clear from day zero, and having the possibility to add value and grow thanks to each other by having a very feedback-oriented culture. So we like to learn a lot from each other, and I'm a big believer also of this concept of talent density. So we have the bar very high, because we have seen that talent attracts talents, and the moment in which like you make compromises on there, then you reduce and you lower the overall performance and let's say environment and culture of the team. So we have offices in Milan, where we have our headquarters. We have a lot of remote working, especially in our tech team, which is almost 100 people by now. We have offices in all the cities that we cover. In Madrid, we grew pretty fast as well. I think now we are probably 40 people in Madrid, 6 or 7 in Barcelona, not yet public, but we just launched Sevilla and Malaga, which is going to be public in, I think, a month or so. So in Spain, we are really struggling to cope with this very fast growth. So I'll share my email later, but if you have an interest to work or to consider a job opportunity, our gates are wide open at this moment. And finally, let me close by saying that we built an inclusive format from the very beginning. So we wanted to have an impact as a platform, generating value not just for consumers, but making the traditional incumbents part of our play, allowing us to provide a better user experience for all home sellers and buyers. So we have worked and we partner with more than 4,000 brokers. We have a dedicated software for them, so we have quite some services on the B2B side. So this was a choice we took from the very beginning, and it was pretty opposite to other players, which they have in their, let me say, the Uber approach, so against taxi drivers, and in our case, against traditional brokers. We think that brokers will be there. It's a very important emotional decision for every person that wants to sell or buy a home, so they'll need relational support, but they can change the way they work, and selectively, some of them are great people and great professionals, and so we are providing them with the tools and access to supply and demand and new services thanks to our partnership and software that we provide. And I would say that all. So this is my email address. Is very simple, giorgio@casavo.com. So now I would like to leave a bit of space to questions and really like have a discussion with all of you informally. So feel free to ask anything Casavo related. And then you can ping me also after this session via email.
Thank you, Mr. Tinacci, again for a very insightful speech and for sharing your personal story as well, the quite impressive story of Casavo. And as well, I want to encourage you, please ask the question for this in this unique situation and possibility. So if you have anyone, please come up and let us know. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a question regarding your, I guess, diversification, how you're going now towards more being a residential platform versus purely being an iBuyer. And you mentioned with the Casavo sell with Casavo functionality that you pair the best brokers with the different sellers. Because I imagine that many people, like you mentioned, don't necessarily need to sell in a short time. So being able to test the market and perhaps get higher prices is advantageous to them. These brokers, how do you find them to be the best? Are they in-house? Are they people that you source from other agencies? Because brokers oftentimes tend to be, at least in particularly depending on the market, some of the sore points. So how do you perfect that aspect and make sure that your customer experience is good throughout?
So that's a very good question. So first of all, I'll give you the background of why we started that service. So we realized that because we had so large volumes of sellers getting to us, we were converting, I don't know, a very high conversion rate, like north of 10% on qualified sellers, but structurally, we were leaving the other sellers with no service. So the result for us, being very customer-centric, was that we had like super high customer satisfaction with those sellers we were converting and neutral, let me say, or poor customer satisfaction for the other ones, which was a big problem for us. So we said, okay, what's the problem with those customers? The problem is that maybe we don't want to submit an offer because we want to submit offers only if we think it's the most convenient solution for that customer, or simply they don't accept it because they have different price expectation. And so what we realized was happening is that they were taking our offer as a sort of floor and then they were going to another broker. And so we said, okay, we can support you with that. Let us help you. We are fine if you want to like test the market, having already a sort of certainty that anyway we would buy at that price. And this is how it happened. So pretty naturally was what was happening on the market. We simply were starting supporting that route. So on that front, let's say, one of our competitive assets we could leverage is that we were already partnering with brokers a lot. So we had already a strong network of brokers, and we knew which were the best ones because we were leveraging all brokers for different things, but most of all for selling our iBuying homes. So we had to select the best brokers to sell the home. So having already access to those brokers and us like being already positioned as business partner to those brokers, bringing additional business, this was another level. We said, okay, we can bring you even more business. And we thought that we were good at converting the sellers because we can show them the price, leverage our technology, but probably we are not the best one to do all the showings and the whole relational thing. So we started from our partner brokers, and now we are testing different things. So we have developed a prototype algorithm to select the best brokers based on both KPIs of performance on our transactions and market transactions as well. So we are pretty data-driven in that. Plus, because we work with brokers with our portfolio and sales team anyway, we have an internal rating system. So this is how we use them. And the other thing for us which was important was that to ensure the same user experience, we were leveraging our software and we provide them with our tools to our partner brokers so that the user experience is going to be the same. I think we still have to improve there, but this is the way we see it. We think it's the compromise because one extreme would be like, okay, you simply do everything on your own, which I think is not that scalable, to be honest, and I think there are better professionals than us sometimes in the market to do so. The other extreme was we simply do lead generation, but it's not differentiating, and it's a very poor customer experience because then you get called by a lot of different brokers and you want to speak with Casavo. So we found this middle ground to be, so far, the most scalable solution and compromise, let's say, that was balancing this trade-off.
Further questions? Yes.
So I have a question regarding your expansion strategy. So far you've been to Spain, Italy and Portugal, but I'm wondering if you want to go to more mature markets, let's say like UK, and if yes, how do you plan to compete with other companies which have kind of the same product in those countries? Do you think you have a unique selling point compared to those?
So that's a very good question. So we spent quite some time on our playbook, so understanding what makes sense and what makes not sense, essentially. The thing we realized is that selling a home and buying a home, it's a global problem. It's not like Italy-specific, Spain-specific, or UK-specific, but depending on how the market shakes out, the path you follow and the services you tune in order to do so in terms of product market fit are different. So we realized that our place, so starting from a buyer, then doing brokerage, and attaching all the buyer integrated services, was in fit with markets which were showing a sort of common denominator of market inefficiency, what we call market inefficiency drivers. So when selecting our countries, we look at what's the liquidity of the market, so the average days to close a transaction, so including the full cycle, which is the cost, so the average brokerage fees in the market, what's the level of price transparency, because we think that we can play a big role in market where you have a very high level of information asymmetry. So if you already have an open data or what they call the decentralized database of prices in the US, which is called MLS, we think it's less appealing for us and for consumers. And finally, we look at for example, we look at a lot of things, but another important thing for us is what's the private ownership ratio of the residential stock. So how much is owned by family household and how much is owned by institutions, essentially, or funds. So on the back of these, we have, first of all, excluded two big markets. One is UK, and the other one is Germany. We excluded UK, for example, because it's a very different market. The level of brokerage fees is already compressed or more compressed than our countries. You have a more consolidated brokerage ecosystem, and you have more price transparency because you have a sort of open land registry, essentially. And we have excluded Germany because it's a market in which the private ownership is probably one of the lowest at the global level. You have 40% compared to 80% in Spain or in Italy private ownership, which makes the market, let's say, a lower priority in terms of serviceable market and addressable market, essentially. Plus, there are some other reasons for Germany. So on the back of that, we said, okay, Southern Europe is the perfect place to start. You have super large markets, which are Italy and Spain, essentially, with a very high level of inefficiency, but solid macro environment, essentially. And on the other hand, we have selected other conglomerates like France, Nordics, and Eastern Europe on the back of that strategy. But the beauty about real estate is that the market is so huge that you could build a multi-billion-dollar business just staying only in Italy, probably, right? And our focus is, at the moment, is tier 1 and tier 2 cities in Italy, Spain, Portugal, and probably France pretty soon, yeah. So that's more or less the logic, yeah. We would always prioritize increasing the market share in a single city or even in single neighborhoods, but at the same time, I mean, you have competitive dynamics, you want to lock the markets first, and so we try to balance all these variables, essentially.
All right, further questions? Yes.
Before you said that in 48 hours you'd be able to acquire the building, the flat. Two questions about this. On the seller side, if you go up to a seller and you tell them that in 48 hours you can buy their house, have you noticed that they don't want to sell it that fast? There's a lot of people who put their house in the market just to know, what's a value, but they're still very undecided because at the end it's up to them. This efficiency that you're offering, have you noticed, especially in cities, countries like Spain, Italy, Portugal, that they are reticenti, that they're not willing to buy it that fast? And on the other hand, these 48 hours, when do they start? Because you'll have to do a due diligence, understand if your renovation can add the value that you need, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you use these 48 hours to add, to do your analysis and to see if you'll...
Yeah, so let me say that there are two different... So first of all, what we realized in terms of proposition, at the beginning I started thinking that speed is what matters. In reality, what we found it was more valuable, it was certainty. It was not about speed, but it was around certainty. Speed of liquidity access might make sense in case like you want like to sell first before you buy, so it's a change of house use case. But the main point is about certainty. So people feel a lot of anxiety connected to this kind of very important financial decision in their life, and the moment in which you provide certainty, you win the customer essentially. So what we realized was that, first of all, it was different between countries. So there are two service levels. First, we say that the moment in which we get all the information, which means after our first property visit, which can happen fully remote on our app, or for some properties still by simply uploading asynchronous information related to the property in a standard format. So after we receive those information, we can send you the offer within 48 hours. After that, we guarantee that we are able to buy the home in Spain in 7 days because it's more efficient. In Italy, we saw exactly what you were saying. We couldn't buy, for example, Italy in 10 to 15 days at the notary, but people like felt it was like too much, for example, and so we said, okay, 30 days. And then finally, what we tested was very powerful, was to say, not sell in 30 days, for example, but sell whenever you want. So we make you the offer, you can accept it or not, it's valid for a certain time frame, and then if you want to come back to us, we make you another offer. So the real value for customers is really about certainty. And in terms of process, we try to make it as simple as possible to customers, but it's highly complex internally. So this process is, first, you generate the lead, so you get the online valuation on our website, then you click I want to move ahead. Based on a prioritization matrix, we get back to you telling you, okay, this is something that makes sense for us and we think we can provide you a meaningful and convenient service. If not, we direct you directly to the brokerage business. After that, we'll schedule the property visit, which is a 15-minute remote visit in 80% of the cases on our app. We go through the different steps of the process, showing picture and all of that. After that, we send an offer which is subject to technical due diligence, but the pricing is not going to change. So it's just a matter of us checking, I don't know, is there a problem with the building? Are there like some hidden things? Or is there like, is actually that person the owner of the home and all of that? So the offer is subject to that technical step. What happens is that there is a third party, like the same services which would come at your home in case you request a mortgage from, I don't know, Unicredit in Italy or Santander in Spain. They would do the check. If everything is fine, the condition precedent gets fulfilled and we can get to the notary. Otherwise, in 5% of the cases, maybe there are some problems that we try to fix, but these are really technical problems. So we always try not to reprice homes, and we want always to stick to the initial price we have sent with the first preliminary offer subject to technical due diligence, essentially. So that's more or less the process.
All right. Still questions open? Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, do you have an in-house legal team to be able to complete the transactions, or is this all done kind of outside? How does it work?
So in our, let's say, countries, the notary step is mandatory. In Portugal, there is a different case, but let's say that it's mandatory that you go to the notary to validate the transaction. So the notarial step, the closing of acquisition or sale, needs to be done at the notary, and so we work with very large industrial firms, but I mean we have to do it with notaries essentially. Unfortunately, regulation doesn't allow us to do like video signature and all of that at the notary at the moment. We have a pretty standardized set of documents throughout the process. We have an in-house legal team, but they only manage like exception or like big process changes. So we try to we don't negotiate every contract, otherwise it would be impossible. So we have a pretty consumer-friendly and standardized set of documentation that we leverage for each transaction. Our legal team steps in only if there are like some caveats or exemptions that need to be managed for a very specific case, but it's very standardized, yeah.
Still questions? Yes, okay.
So I was wondering, which is your future prospects for the future expansion, and how are you planning to push people to use more your service and move away from what is the agency transaction, which people maybe like culturally stick to it because of tradition or because of habits?
Yeah, I think first of all, I don't think that the share of brokerage transaction is going to get lower over time. I think it's going to stay at this level or even go higher, to be honest. Simply the way people will access brokerage service is going to change over time. And your point is a very fair one, because what I was saying before is that real estate is a very traditional industry. There is a lot of emotions connected to that, and so it's very hard to change from day to night. So one of the, let's say, sales or distribution strategies that worked for us very well was that we were partnering with brokers in order to provide our services. So, for example, in 2018, 10% of our homes were bought directly from leads generating day zero on our website and 90% from partner brokers. And now we are at almost 50-50, so it changed. But essentially, we leverage traditional brokers as a means to educate the customers and the whole market about our service. Well, what we have realized is that you have this pattern through which, as you increase your brand awareness, people got to know you, and you have referrals and word of mouth, the share of what you do directly without, let's say, the vehicle of partner brokers improves over time. And it's very rational, right? Because it's the same seller that pays more fees because there is a broker in the middle, but we understood that there is a level of emotion, so you cannot consider this as a pure, super rational financial decision making. When you have to buy or sell a home, emotions get into place. And this is why we thought about building an inclusive model of brokers, so having sort of also B2B2C channels in order to deliver our services.
All right. Doesn't seem like any more questions. Then, Mr. Tinacci, I really want to thank you for taking your time, sharing your personal story with our students, speaking to our REAS community, and as a little thank you, we prepared a little present for you.
Thank you very much.
So please make some noise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and now take the chance, go outside, we prepared the venue, take the opportunity to network and enjoy the venue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.